So I just showed my mom something, and something caught my eye. All right. So this article about skimmers. All right. This video. All right. That logo. There's a certain numbers company that it seems like has been using for artificial inflation of their, projected revenue, has been cooking the books as a corporation. And the funny thing is, finding out that there is that organization or that numbers company under the umbrella of Speedway right nearby. Ultimately, it feels like a chance to try to shake down what you went to go attempts to sweep under the rug to try to not end up in prison. That's what that's looking like. So, oh, thank heaven, that's apparently public knowledge now. And by the way, am I still being accused of stealing a card? And are you now seeing literal skimmer? All right. So ultimately, what was given the heads up? When you go to an ATM, look around the card reader, check for glue, look up. If looking up, you're able to go ahead and see a pinhole, that pinhole is the camera for the scammer to go ahead and be able to look at the keypad to be able to get access to your PIN code. All right? So, and stop fucking racially profiling people and assuming that just because somebody's paranoid and wants to go say thief, that's actually the case. Because take a look, apparently, how easy it is for somebody to go ahead and skim and scam your card. Literally right there, just bringing your card or your family member's card, that right there is enough for your identity to get stolen. So stop falsely accusing your family members. Stop assuming that because somebody got racially profiled, that there has to be a speck of truth to it. All right? And ultimately, if somebody is working on something, like say, for example, when your spouse ends up going ahead and trying to say, if you really trusted me, you would go ahead and, not have a lock on your phone, or you wouldn't go ahead and, try to block access to my phone. If you're aspiring to get into the legal profession or any type of profession that the potential compromising of information could go ahead and be detrimental to career trajectory, and the information is sensitive, understand, I don't give a fuck what you think your norms are or your prerogatives as a spouse. All right? If you end up going in a circumstance that potential attorney-client privilege could end up coming into play, because keep in mind, crime fraud exception, all right? So if your lawyer catches you lying, all right, and if your lawyer ends up going ahead and realizing that you're trying to win by deception, or for example, just try to cause somebody else to lose by default, that right there could end up costing them their entire career. So if your spouse wants to go ahead and put that rhetoric, then go ahead and ask your spouse, okay, so am I going to go ahead and be a, house husband? Okay, let me go ahead and get the lazy boy and everything. I'll go get the remote, got the TV set up and everything, got the computer and everything. Hey, yo, guys, what platform are we going ahead and streaming on? Yo, we still doing, by far D&D? And if they end up asking, well, what makes you come to that assumption? The only response you could give is, well, ultimately, if you want access to my phone, you're also going to end up going ahead and potentially compromising, my entire livelihood. So, considering that that's the case, no, go fuck yourself, unless you're going to go ahead and, take on an extra job, side hustle, whatever the case is, I mean, shit. Am I going to hold the camera? You doing OnlyFans? You doing OnlyFans? You were considering it, but you wanted to try to cut me out, didn't you? I fucking knew it. Alright. Then, why would that end up going ahead and being where you think this is going? Well, because if I let you look at my phone, that means I'm out of a job, and if I actually do end up going ahead and making more than you, and you're not just trying to blow smoke up my ass, trying to cover up your frivolous spending and your crazy excessive, justifications that makes you think I'm in the right, or justified, while simultaneously not understanding that if you go ahead and unravel an investigation that has taken almost a decade to go ahead and look into, that is now finally becoming public knowledge. So now that it is public knowledge, it can finally publicly be speaking on. Sorry. You couldn't tell that there's been extra drive arounds. They've seen me outside. Haven't stopped or anything. So you know what that means? That means they're like, no, we're keeping an eye, because we're picking up what's dropping. So, but anyway, my point. At that point, you could go ahead and tell her, hey, if you want to know what it feels like, if I end up doing that and everything ends up going to shit, we're going to go ahead and we're going to pretend like it's a viral online challenge, right? We're going to call it the Starving Ethiopian Challenge, or who could suck wind the fastest before dropping from, malnutrition. Well, we could avoid malnutrition, but you're going to have to eat rotten food. I mean, gotta cut costs where we can cut cost, But, it doesn't sound too appealing to you? Oh, and you don't want to have to worry about carrying all the bills alone. Alright. So then, do you think it's pretty important to let me do my job and stop trying to interject? Because, ultimately, understand, you trying to interject and be nosy and over the shoulder and everything could end up potentially being the difference between, being able to survive and sustain, or having absolutely nothing potentially, because when it comes to finances, you want me to take your word for it, but isn't that the same type of situation that you went to go ahead and give with a sneak attack divorce, or what was supposed to be perceived as a sneak attack divorce, which was really an attempt to coerce a confession and a plea bargain to take the fall for crimes he committed. Yeah, you're pretty fucked. But thanks for adding the insult to injury of, setting my court date for Hanukkah. And yeah, I get what your reference was. Screw you too. Ultimately, I don't gotta like your beliefs if that's your beliefs. But obviously, it's because of the factor that in your perception, you have more of a right to be alive than I do. You see it as, if I had it my way, their kind would be dead. And you know what the funny thing is? If I was going to go ahead and be doing an entrance interview, for example, like a nursing position and everything, do you know what the best answer that you could potentially give during the interview process? All right, regardless of how much of an attitude you have. Go ahead and clarify. I'm capable of physically, basket carrying a full-grown person that apparently just under 200. Don't get me wrong, it's going to take me a bit, especially if they go completely limp and dead weight without actually having a transfer board. But ultimately, I'm able to go ahead and shit talk when needed, while at the same time, I am able to internalize any and every protocol. Alright? We're talking on an administrative level. Alright? Ultimately, I ended up going ahead and damn near getting this started job training at 6 years old. That's a pretty screwed up situation. Ultimately, when it comes... Well, let me put it to you this way. I could give you an instruction manual and be like, here's my triggers, here's my experience, here's what makes me qualified, here's real life experience, here's medical conditions that I personally have that I have to endure. So because of the factor that I'm able to endure that pain and I've experienced that pain, I'm able to empathize and sympathize with that pain, while at the same time, not disregarding the warning signs of when to listen or not to listen to somebody that ultimately doesn't understand that them listening to you or not listening to you could be the difference on if you end up becoming a familiar face or you end up becoming an epitaph. It's pretty morbid, but it's true. Alright? Ultimately, someone that actually doesn't fraternize with, coworkers, employees, ultimately, when it comes to HR and everything, gives so much documentation that at this point, I am capable of being able to replace an entire human resources division. Like with my categorizing system as far as the way I actually do it. Just a lot of different things. But my point is, I don't know how you could see that being, how a detriment or an asset. But ultimately, outside of my job too, just so that way, any rumors or anything, raped the gay away, went through that, traumatic, don't want to relive details of it, trying to move forward. Ultimately, just to give you a heads up, if anybody tries to breach my personal space bubble, ultimately the code, so that way you understand, that the people-pleasing tendencies are not letting somebody sexual harass me. I will go ahead and say, I need an adultier adult. Alright? That'll be my personal call on that. And ultimately, too, I'm not too proud or anything to go ahead and say the factor that I have had some uniquely fucked up shit happen to me. And at the same time, there's some really nasty looks that could go ahead and be thrown because of the factor of people that didn't want to hear me out, while simultaneously not liking the factor that I was actually absorbing the information despite the learning disability, despite on an alternate path, an alternate way, and that I actually end up going ahead and meeting the threshold to be able to, through alternative STEM means, meet all the credentials. Not to mention that, but when it comes down to my sexual orientation, because I know the diversity factor, whether or not you want to say it matters, I know it matters. Ultimately, if you want to find out about how sensitive somebody is and if they're actually fit for the position, go ahead and put them in a real lived experience position. All right? Go ahead and have them shamed, have them go with you to gay club. Ultimately, they're pretty much making sure that everything's in the clear, trying to make sure everyone's safe, trying to be as responsible as possible in the process. Well, people would go ahead and heckle, be like, you would really go ahead and, take a beating for queer? And my response with my actions was the equivalent of, I want you to think of the job path that I'm on. Would you want somebody in my line of work that would give any other answer than, why the fuck wouldn't you? That's equality.